So I really hope I'm wrong, but it's looking like we are really close to conflict between the USA and Iran. I really hope this doesn't happen just for the sake of war being, such an awful, expensive and bloody affair. Even if the USA is, overwhelmingly more powerful as I think it is than Iran militarily, Iran, I think, has nuclear weapons. So just the threat of them being able to use them, and any kind of nuclear conflict potentially is really scary for me. But I've wondered, how do the two stack up against each other? Like, I think, the US is fairly, considerably more powerful militarily than Iran, but what does Iran have in its arsenal compared to the US?
As we write this, you don't have to look far to find headlines in the media containing the words US and Iran and conflict. The BBC writes that the USA has sent over 1,000 troops to the Middle East because, according to the American Acting Defense Secretary, Patrick Shanahan, Iran has been acting hostile. Iran has been accused of oil tanker attacks, and the country, it said, will also soon breach a 2015 deal regarding its uranium stockpiles. The New York Times has called this a new confrontation with the West. How bad could this get? What kind of a threat would Iran be? Is there really a threat at all when compared to the might of the US military? Let's have a look. If you watched many of our other military comparison shows, then you're likely already an expert when it comes to the arsenal of the US military. You'll know that the US spends more on defense than any other country by a long way. Sources differ, and it's hard to get the exact spending down to the last dollar.
I think it's like $1 trillion now, isn't it? The annual military budget. It's like $1 trillion, I think.
If you go to the actual U.S. Department of Defense website, one of the first things you'll read is that President Trump plans to pump an extra $160 billion into defense. The prediction from the DoD, right from the horse's mouth, is that by the end of 2019, defense spending will have reached $686 billion. Where does all this—
And that number's obviously way bigger today. Way bigger. Way bigger.
Cash go? Well, the DoD website just breaks it down into simply various departments: the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine Corps, Coast Guard, and Joint Chiefs. If you're wondering what the Joint Chiefs are, well, they kind of run the show. Part of their mission statement reads, "The future operating environment will place new demands on leaders at all levels. Our leaders must have the training, education, and experience to meet those demands." It's not all about spending money on killer toys, of course, because you have a lot of paychecks at the end of the week. The U.S. military has 2,083,100 personnel.
Wow.
1,281,900 work as active personnel.
Wow, so that active personnel number, 1.3 million, they're ready to go at any point? That's incredible.
And 801,200 reservists. On top of that, you have all kinds of special units and specialists to pay. It's not free when the US, say, wants to buy artificial intelligence technology to scan faces, go through hours of drone videos, etc. Research and development, according to the US military, eats up a great deal of money. Thankfully, someone else has broken down the budget for us, and it goes like this. A little over $205 billion goes to the Navy, and the Air Force will basically get the same at $204.8 billion. $191.4 billion will go to the Army, and $116.6 billion will go to projects spread across the DoD.
Wow, $116 billion just on projects. That's so much money. That's so much. Americans watching this, are you happy with the amounts of money being spent on the military, or would you rather have a portion of it diverted to maybe infrastructure like hospitals, schools, roads, that kind of thing, maybe healthcare? What are your thoughts?
$104.3 billion will go to research, development, test, and evaluation. $143.1 billion will go to buying new things, such as expensive aircraft and ships. $155.8 billion will actually go to the actual men and women of the military through the paycheck budget. $22.5 billion will go to building houses for personnel and other military construction projects. $292.7 billion, the biggest part of the budget, is for maintaining the military. If you add all this up, though, it comes to more than the actual budget. That's because some of the spending overlaps, such as research, purchases, or wages, that might need to be accounted for as part of the individual forces' budgets.
I was going to say that number would be almost $1.5 trillion, right?
If you look at what the military has been buying or trying to buy, you'll see that the F-35 Joint Strike Fighters are a big item on the shopping list. These things also get sold, of course, but as we write this, Japan, according to some reports, is no longer looking at buying many more of them because it has created its own aircraft that it sees as superior. Nonetheless, if you follow military news, you'll know that these things are still selling like hotcakes. The US currently has around 200, plans to build a staggering 1,763 more.
Wow.
As we've said before, the US no doubt has the most powerful air force in the world.
It's almost 2,000 more F-35s. The cost of that will be astronomical. Because each one of those planes, I think, is in, what, at least $100 million, right? Whew.
And we just cannot list everything that's in its arsenal of flying machines. But some of the most powerful beasts include the fleets of F-22 Raptors, F-15E Strike Eagles, F/A-18EF Super Hornets, and F-16 Fighting Falcons. Some of the newer machines are 15 KC-46 tanker strategic military transport aircrafts and also the B-21 stealth bomber. So, can Iran afford to spend billions and billions of dollars on just one plane alone? Well, the answer is a resounding no. And in fact, recent news reports tell us that the country has slashed defense spending to the equivalent of $43 billion. Compare this to reports in 2019 that the U.S. Navy just paid Virginia shipbuilder Huntington Ingalls $15 billion to start construction on the new Ford-class aircraft carriers.
Which I think are now ready, the Ford-class carriers. Yeah, I'm sure they are.
Also bear in mind the billions spent on new aircraft, or the two fleet replenishment oilers at $1.1 billion, the 5,113 joint light tactical vehicles costing $2 billion, or the M1 Abrams tank modification setting the US back $2.7 billion. Just one new Columbia-class submarine will cost $3.7 billion, and the military has requested $6 billion for some DDG-51 Arleigh Burke-class destroyers. The list goes on and on.
How much money of these sums do you think goes to the right places versus, you know, like places where it shouldn't go? Because, you know, these numbers are just so astronomically high, right? Does it really cost $15 billion to build an aircraft carrier? I mean, they are very impressive machines, but that just seems like such a big amount of money, doesn't it?
And we cannot possibly tell you everything on that shopping list. But all in all, you have over 2 million personnel, around 13,400 military planes and counting, including about 5,700 helicopters. Add to that 6,287 tanks for land-based operations.
Insane.
Then on water, you have a total of 20 aircraft carriers, which are like a traveling army, and would be very important when fighting a country located on the other side of the globe. The USA also has 68 destroyers and 68 submarines, but as you know, more of both are in the pipeline. As you can see, this is shaping up to be a David and Goliath story.
Yeah, I mean, Iran just doesn't stack up, at least from what we know publicly. Militarily, it just wouldn't stand a chance, would it? Like, so surely it's in their interest to come to a deal, really, with America.
No one doubts that in terms of equipment, the USA has by far the biggest and arguably most advanced military in the world. We say arguably because countries such as China, Japan, the UK, India, France, Russia also have some very capable military toys. Iran, though, well, you won't find the country on the top 10 lists when it comes to military might. And some writers have described Iran's equipment as being Cold War-era machines. In total, Iran has 523,000 active military personnel, but also around 350,000 reservists. They own 509 military aircraft, which sounds fairly impressive, but let's see what kind of planes these are. For starters, they have 54 American-made McDonnell Douglas F-4 Phantom IIs. Some of these are pretty old, but we're told many have been upgraded. Joining the list are also some other capable multi-role aircraft.
But even if they've been upgraded, what's an F-4 going to do against an F-35 or an F-22? It's going to be like, you know, easy work for America.
Such as 23 French-made Dassault Mirage F-1s. As for ground attack, Iran has about 50 Russian-made planes and the Sukhoi Su range, the Su-22, Su-24, and 25. Iran is also in the process of building a 5th-generation stealth fighter aircraft called the IAIO Kaher 313. Although some experts have cast doubts as to how viable this aircraft will be. This is not a weak air force by any means, but much of that strength comes from purchased American military hardware. That said, much of this fleet is aging and in need of an upgrade, whereas the American military has never stopped upgrading their equipment, whether they need it or not, as any American taxpayer can tell you. As for tanks, Iran has 1,634 of them, but we might ask just how advanced these tanks are. Well, again, the country owns quite a few older models bought from the USA, Russia, and has also some homemade tanks. But in 2018, Iran's Deputy Defense Minister Reza announced that the country was in the process of building another 700 to 800 new tanks.
Wow.
The country also has 2,345 armored fighting vehicles. But compare that to the 39,223 armored fighting vehicles in the USA, which for the most part are much more modern.
Americans watching this, do you have the appetite for potentially another war in the Middle East? You know, how do you feel about it? I'm sure a lot of you would rather this doesn't happen. You know, that's how I feel. You know, we've just had 20 years of Iraq and Afghanistan. Like, do we really need another war in that region? Like, I really hope this doesn't happen.
But where Iran is really weak is in the water, as it doesn't have a single aircraft carrier to speak of. Remember, the US has 20. The country has no destroyers either, but does have a 34-strong submarine fleet and 6 frigates. While Iran really is an underdog to the US military, that doesn't mean it isn't a strong military. Ranking militaries is difficult and shouldn't be taken as an exact science. Iran has had to be a strong military presence before, and it has a large, well-trained military because of its location in a volatile region. Reporting has stated that they have a ground force that includes over 1,600 tanks, 725 reconnaissance and infantry fighting vehicles, 640 armored personnel carriers, 2,322 towed and self-propelled howitzers, and 1,476 multiple rocket launchers. Yes, the numbers can change, since we guess the press doesn't have a regular tank counter working all over the world, but
This is true. They could have a lot of stuff in secret that they've been working on that we don't know about. That's a fair point.
we're guessing these numbers are pretty close to reality. Much like their air fleet though, much of this equipment is somewhat outdated and likely needing of either upgrading or a full replacement. Now, we already know that the USA has some of the most advanced special forces units in the world, and also is not bad at collecting intelligence through the CIA, NIS, and both of their cutting-edge computer technologies. But the Iranian forces have also a special branch that is said to be very highly trained and is an entity to be feared, the Quds Force, a special ops unit within Iran's Revolutionary Guards. They number around 15 to 30,000 very skilled agents and work in what you might call unconventional warfare. Iran also has the advantage in the event of an invasion of being a geographically difficult country to assault via land. It's a large country and the major cities are mostly located in areas that would be difficult for land forces to quickly reach. And now we come back to the start. What about these new fears of nuclear conflict? The New York Times writes this: Iran is still well more than a year away from being able to build a weapon, perhaps much longer.
But by now they probably have got one. If they've been stockpiling uranium for all this time, you know, they've probably got one by now. You'd have to think.
But the experts in the article also said it would take much longer to produce what the Times called a deliverable weapon. It's highly unlikely Iran is thinking about attacking the USA. And many European countries have blamed the US for putting Iran in a difficult position thanks to harsh sanctions. We won't get into the politics, but suffice to say, confrontation of military powers with nuclear weapons is not something anyone wants. As Newsweek points out, while the US military is by far superior in every way, an invasion would be a long, drawn-out affair. They wrote, "If decades of difficult conflicts worldwide have taught the American military anything, it's that a mighty armory goes only so far. Let's hope for some diplomacy that works for both nations and the threat of a conflict behind us." What do you think about all this?
As we suspected, you know, just putting them next to each other, both militaries, the US for sure is just way more powerful than the military of Iran. But I just, you know, want to know what you guys think. Like, is the reason that the US is, you know, really seriously considering like attacking Iran, is it worth it? Like, is it worth potentially all of the boots on the ground that are going to have to be involved, the sending of the equipment, you know, the money that war costs, like all of that stuff? Is that what we need right now? I think that's probably the bigger question that we need to answer. And I wish that the public, the American people, had a bit more of a say when it came to what their military did, because, you know, I don't think decisions like this, like when you're sending your army to war, should be made by people who won't fight in it. Personally, I think the people who are actually going to have to go and fight should have a say. in whether you go and fight or not. Like, I think that's only fair, isn't it, right? Thanks for watching, guys. If you enjoyed the video, I'm going to link a very similar one right below here, and I'll see you there.